Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this really rather dismal, rainy day, although it is improving at the moment. Hope you're all well. Just a couple of words this morning about where we are with Brexit. And the short answer to that is nowhere. And the slightly longer answer is that I believe that we are no further or no nearer to getting out of the European Union today than we were on the 24th of June 2016. In fact, we're probably further away. I want to take you through a quick article on the latest the update from the European Union, which always turns out to be nothing, which I posted out on Twitter a couple of days ago. And this is from the BBC, and it's the latest about the transition phase that we are to go through after the date to leave is passed in March 2019. And I'll post this article out again when I'm finished. But it reads, it's from the BBC, it reads, the European Union has set out its demands for the temporary transition period after the UK leaves in March 2019. Now, immediately you are told who's in charge here. And that's the first mistake the UK has made and continues to make. The European Union has set out its demands. The European Union is in charge. It says the EU wants the UK to continue to follow its rules, but not be involved in making decisions. Now, they make it sound like that's something new. It isn't. The EU makes the decisions now, and any influence or any say that member states are deemed to have is an illusion. It's a nothing. You only have to look at the legislative process in the European Union to know that that's an illusion. It's proposing legislation, for example, comes from the unelected Commission. The Council, which is ostensibly a representative of the states of the member states, the governments in other words, and the European Parliament, ostensibly representing the citizens of the member states, both filled to bursting with pro-EU representatives, both in the European Parliament and the European Council, or the Council of Europe, and both there simply to rubber stamp. They negotiate and they debate legislation, and if they can't come to an agreement, the whole thing is scrapped and the Commission starts again, probably with new wording to get around any objections to the last one. But the fact is, the European Commission, the unelected part of the EU machinery, is the decision maker, and influenced by member states is simply not real. And you can see that it's not real whenever they disagree. Now, the European Union is disgusted by Brexit. We all know that. And over the next couple of years, and we've seen it in the last year and a half, it's being ramped up. There's been a mistake. You've made a mistake. There's no need to go through with this. Our arms are still open to the UK. And this will happen to drip and drip and drip doubt into the public mind of the British people. Expect this to be ramped up over the next couple of years. Now, the EU goes on to say, go back to the article, the EU goes on to say that they hope the two sides can reach, this is the EU and the UK, can reach agreement by March. Now, this is what they want us to agree on. And in their guidelines, they say that the transition period should run from March 2019 to December 2020. All EU rules and regulations, as well as EU rule changes adopted after March 2019, should apply to the UK during this transition phase. So all rules, all laws, whatever the EU decides during this transition phase will still apply. In other words, we'll still be in the European Union. There shall be no cherry picking, says the EU, on the single market, so free movement into the UK should continue. So one of the major reasons we voted to leave the EU will continue even after we've left. Now, who thinks that this transition period is going to actually end in December 2020? It will drag on, it will drag on, it will drag on. And it will drag on all the while we are still subject to the same rules of the European Union. Look, we are not getting out of the EU. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because the EU won't let it. And even the language we're constantly using. I mean, David Davis said that the UK wanted a right to object to new laws passed by the EU during this time. A right to object? You're still asking them permission for every little thing. We are still begging for scraps, even after the majority of people voted to leave. This is the monster of the EU. And this is when you learn that the member states have no say whatsoever. Even after we voted to leave, we are still begging for scraps. It will go on, it will go on, and it will go on. We are not getting out of the European Union, and certainly not without drastic change. We should have 1 million people on the streets of London tomorrow, and even that wouldn't have any huge impact. I'd like to see it, but it wouldn't have any huge impact. The public is already being worn down. It's already tired of this, and that is the EU's plan. And any parties, and here's another example of why countries have no say. Look what happens to parties within member states when they begin to object to the European Union. All mainstream politics across the European Union, all of it is pro-EU. And when smaller parties try to break through, you will see what happens. The compliant media will immediately jump up and down and call them racists and bigots and Nazis and scare people away from listening to them. This is how the EU maintains control. And it might seem that Germany runs the EU. It's the other way around. The EU runs Germany, and the people who run Germany are the same people that run the EU, and that's not a coincidence. The EU decides, whether directly or indirectly, who governs the member states. And when we have the audacity to dare to vote differently and try from within the member states to make change, they will clamp down on it as soon as they possibly can, using their compliant media to do so. I've said for a long time, the only way out of the European Union is to get rid of the European Union. I sincerely believe we can do it. It is creaking as it stands. And I'll make an appeal for two things this morning. One, let's get 1 million people on the streets of London. Public opinion is important, if it doesn't influence the politicians a great deal, but it does influence other people, and it gives confidence to those who are already silently becoming despondent about leaving the European Union. Let's give a boost to Brexit. And the other one, my other appeal this morning, and I've already had some discussions and some communications, is for people across Europe. Stand up. This thing is crushing every single country in this great ancient continent. And I know that growing numbers of people can see it. If we all stand up together, we can make this thing fall down. It's creaking, it's breaking under the weight of its own illegitimacy, its own bullying, and its own tyranny. Tyranny is the word. Eastern Europe, as we can see as well, and again this shows us how much say the states really have. Eastern European states are a real fly in the ointment for the European Union, and you can see the kind of threats they get when they start to speak up. Now, the Eastern Europeans can smell tyranny. They know it. They've had it in their lifetimes, and they know that's what the EU represents. I want everyone from across Europe, all political campaign groups, all anti-EU groups, no matter how big or small, to come together and push this monster over. It's waiting for it. We must get rid of it, because this is a lesson. How difficult they are making it for the UK is a lesson to the rest of Europe. You can get in, but you cannot get out. That is tyranny. That is totalitarianism, and that is the European Union. I think that's enough from me for today. I shall be back tomorrow morning at 11. I'm now off to take my dogs to the vet, and I shall see you back here tomorrow at 11. Take care.
We will make America great again.